The sun above the alien city was hot and bright, but the hearts of the people in the marketplace were cold. Crowds moved between stalls, buying strange fruits, colorful fabrics, and blinking tech gadgets. Voices shouted prices, laughter rang through the air, but no one noticed the small figure sitting near the trash piles. She was thin, skin pale and cracked, clothes torn, eyes dull from hunger. Her name was Tali, a young alien mother from a low-ranked species. She sat on the ground with her arms wrapped around something small and quiet. A baby, her child, barely breathing. For 3 days, she had walked the market with open hands. She had whispered for food, begged for help, cried silent tears. But no one had answered. Not the vendors, not the guards, not even the other aliens. They looked at her like garbage, like something not worth saving. Some turned their heads, others laughed. One child threw a piece of rotten fruit at her, shouting, "Go back to your hole." Tali didn't reply. She just held her baby tighter and tried to stop her hands from shaking. Her baby, Niru, hadn't cried in hours. He was too weak, too hungry, too small to survive another night. Tali felt the heartbeat against her chest, softer than before. She knew what was coming. A guard walked past her for the 3rd time. He kicked her foot and said coldly, "You can't stay here. Move or I'll drag you out." Tali looked up slowly, lips dry, voice nearly gone. She whispered, "Just the scraps, for my baby." The guard frowned and walked away without a word. No one cared, no one helped. She was invisible, but someone heard her. From the edge of the alley, standing in the shadows, a figure watched her. He was tall, broad, wearing a dark coat over a gray shirt and worn-out boots. A scar ran down the side of his face, and his eyes were not like the others. His eyes burned with anger, and something else, something deep. He was human, and his name was Reed. He didn't move at first. He just stood there, arms crossed, watching as the crowd ignored her, watching as she slowly sank to the ground like a broken doll. Reed knew what hunger looked like. He had seen it in war zones, on distant planets, in camps where no one came to help. He had seen children die in silence, just like that small alien child in her arms. And something inside him snapped. He stepped forward, slow but strong. The crowd barely noticed until he reached her. Then a few stopped talking, their eyes following the strange human. Tali didn't see him at first. Her eyes were closed, lips still whispering, "Please, just scraps." Reed knelt beside her. His voice was low but firm. "Hey, can you hear me?" Tali opened her eyes, confused, afraid. She had never seen a human this close before. Reed reached into his coat and pulled out a wrapped protein bar. He tore it open and gently placed it near her mouth. First, she didn't move. Then her eyes fell on her baby, and slowly, with shaking fingers, she took the food. She didn't eat it herself. She crumbled it softly and placed it in her baby's mouth, letting him suck the pieces. Tears ran down her face, not from sadness, but relief. Reed said nothing. He stood up, took off his coat, and wrapped it around both of them. The people around them watched in silence. Some whispered, some sneered, but no one dared stop him. A merchant spoke loudly. "You'll regret helping her, human. Her kind brings nothing but filth." Reed turned his head slowly, his voice ice-cold. "Say that again." The merchant backed off, pretending to fix his stall. Reed looked down at Tali, her head resting on his coat. The baby moved slightly, breathing a little stronger now. Reed picked them both up gently, one arm under Tali, the other cradling the child. Tali gasped weakly, Why help me?" Reed didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, because someone should have 3 days ago. And with that, he walked through the crowd. People stepped aside as if feeling the heat of something dangerous. The human who didn't walk away. The human who saw the forgotten. The human who chose to act. The marketplace of cold eyes watched in silence as Reed carried the starving alien mother and her child into the unknown. But something had changed. A story had begun, and it would not end quietly. Reed walked through the narrow streets with the alien mother in his arms. Tali was barely conscious, her child wrapped tight against her chest. The human's coat shielded them both from the wind, but not from the stares. People turned and whispered. Some pointed, others looked away. They had never seen a human carry a low-caste alien like that. Not with care, not with respect. Most thought she was already dead weight, but Reed walked with purpose. Eyes straight ahead, jaw clenched like stone. He passed the guards at the edge of the market. One of them stepped forward and held out his hand. "What are you doing with her?" the guard asked, voice sharp. Reed didn't stop walking. He muttered, "Move." The guard placed a hand on Reed's chest. A foolish mistake. In one smooth motion, Reed caught his wrist and twisted. The guard yelped, falling to his knees. "I said move," Reed repeated, louder this time. The second guard didn't say a word. He simply stepped aside. The first one groaned on the ground, holding his arm. Reed walked on, leaving silence behind him. Tali stirred slightly in his arms, her voice weak. Where are you taking us?" Reed answered without looking down. "Someplace safe." She didn't know if she should trust him, but she had no strength left to argue. The streets turned darker as they left the city center. Cracked buildings and broken signs lined the way. He reached a door covered in rust, tapped a code into a hidden panel. The door creaked open, revealing a long, dim hallway. Inside was an old bunker built during the last colony war, now forgotten by most. Reed had claimed it years ago when he first arrived on this planet. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe, warm, and stocked with supplies. He laid Tali gently on a makeshift bed made from blankets and foam. The baby rested beside her, finally breathing better. Reed opened a container, pulled out clean water and another protein bar. He placed them near her and sat down on a crate nearby, watching silently. Tali blinked slowly, trying to make sense of it all. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Reed leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You want the truth?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Because I've seen this before," he said, voice low. "Years ago, on another planet, during a siege, I watched a mother die with her child in her arms, because no one would help her. And I stood there, frozen, afraid, too late." His eyes were sharp, but filled with something heavy, something broken. "I swore I'd never let it happen again." Tali listened, tears sliding down her cheeks. Her hands trembled as she held her baby close. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even those from her own species. Reed stood and walked to a side cabinet. Pulling out a small heater, he placed it near the bed and turned it on. Warm air filled the room, soft and steady. "Sleep now," he said, not unkindly. "You and the baby need rest." Tali hesitated, but exhaustion pulled her down like a tide. She whispered a soft thank you before her eyes closed. Reed stayed awake, watching the door. The city wasn't safe. Someone would have seen him carry her away, and people who ignored a starving mother would not forgive someone who helped her. He checked his rifle, loaded it quietly, and placed it beside him. Old memories flooded his mind. Soldiers screaming, children crying, fire in the skies. He took a slow breath, calming the storm inside. In the silence, the baby let out a small cough. Reed turned his head quickly, ready to help, but the sound that followed wasn't a cry. It was a giggle, soft and pure. The baby had smiled in his sleep. Reed blinked, then let out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh. He hadn't heard a baby laugh in years, and in that moment, something in his chest softened. He looked over at Tali, her face peaceful for the first time. He didn't know what came next. He didn't know if this world would let them live. But for now they were alive, and he would keep it that way. The bunker was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater and the gentle breaths of the sleeping child. Reed sat with his back against the cold wall, one hand on his rifle, the other resting on his knee. He didn't sleep, not fully. He had learned long ago that safety was a lie, and peace always came before the storm. The smell of dust and old metal filled the air, but to Tali, it felt like a palace. When she opened her eyes, her first thought was fear, then confusion, then warmth. Her baby, Niru, was wrapped safely in the human's coat. Eyes blinking slowly, cheeks no longer gray. Tali sat up slowly, her muscles sore and shaking. She looked around and saw Reed nearby, eyes closed but awake. She stared at him, this strange human who had saved her life. "You stayed," she whispered. Reed opened one eye and nodded. "Didn't plan on going anywhere," he said, voice rough but calm. Tali looked down at Niru and then back at Reed. He laughed last night," she said, almost in disbelief. Reed gave a small nod. "Yeah, tough little guy." She paused, unsure if she should speak again. "No one has ever helped me before," she said quietly. "Not even my own people." Reed didn't answer right away. He reached into a nearby box and pulled out a sealed pouch, tossing it toward her. "Food? Eat slowly, your body's weak." Tali opened it with shaking fingers and began to eat. The taste was bland but rich compared to what she had known. She gave some to Niru, crumbling it gently so he could chew. Watching her baby eat brought tears to her eyes again. But this time they were soft, not sharp. Reed stood up and stretched, walking over to a panel on the wall. He tapped a few buttons and a screen lit up, showing old maps of the city. Red dots blinked on the edges, and Tali noticed his frown. "They're looking for you," he said, almost to himself. Tali froze, her hands still holding the food. "Why? I have nothing." Reed turned and looked at her. "Some species like yours are seen as trash here. Not citizens, not even workers." He sighed. "And someone out there put a bounty on your kind. Maybe for credits, maybe just for sport." Tali looked down, her shoulders shaking. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. Reed's voice grew firmer. "You existed, and sometimes that's all it takes for cruel people to hate." She looked at him with wide, sad eyes. "Will they come here?" He walked back and sat beside her, placing his rifle on the floor. "They might, eventually, but I've got traps and scanners around the area." He gave her a small, almost warm look. "You're not alone anymore." Those words hit her harder than hunger ever had. She had always been alone, even before Niru was born. She was unwanted, ignored, pushed to the edges of every colony. But this human, this strange, quiet man with a scar and a soft heart, he meant what he said. Time passed slowly in the bunker. Reed taught Tali how to use the heater, how to check the traps, and how to purify water. He never asked for anything in return. He just did things, showed her things, and nodded as if that was enough. One evening, while Niru slept peacefully, Tali looked over at Reed. "You were a soldier, weren't you?" Reed didn't answer at first, just stared at the flickering heater flame. "A long time ago," he said finally. "Fought in the war between Terrans and Zoln." Tali gasped. "That war killed millions." Reed nodded slowly. "Yeah, and saved none." He rubbed his scar without thinking, lost in old memories. "I left the war, came here to disappear, to try to forget." Tali said nothing, letting the silence speak for him. In that silence, a strange comfort grew between them. Later that night, a loud beep echoed in the room. Reed snapped up, gun ready, eyes sharp. "Motion sensor, outer perimeter." Tali clutched Niru tightly, fear returning to her chest like fire. "They found us." Reed moved quickly, checking the screens. One figure, just one, hovered near the treeline outside. Too small to be a threat, maybe just a scout, maybe something worse. He picked up a small device and handed it to Tali. "If I don't come back in 5 minutes, take Niru and follow the tunnel behind the cabinet. Don't stop." Tali's eyes widened. "Wait, don't go out alone." He gave her a calm look. "If it's danger, I'd rather it be me." And then he was gone, slipping out the side door like a shadow. Tali held her child close, praying for the first time in years. Outside, ash fell from the sky like snow. Reed moved between broken walls and old trees, eyes scanning the dark. He didn't know what he would find, only that whatever it was, he would not let it take them. Not this time, not ever again. Reed moved like a shadow through the ash-covered trees. His steps were silent, his grip on the rifle tight. The motion sensor had picked up one figure, too close to ignore. He scanned the darkness, searching for movement, breath steady and slow. Then he saw her, a young alien girl, no older than 15, crouched behind a broken log. She looked hungry, small, and scared. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and her thin hands trembled as she clutched a small cloth bag. Reed lowered his weapon slightly but didn't relax. He stepped into the open and spoke calmly. "You lost." The girl jumped, her ears twitching. "Don't shoot. I'm just looking for food," she cried out. Reed watched her closely. Something felt off, her story too smooth, her fear too well-timed. He tossed her a protein bar from his coat. "You shouldn't be this deep in the woods alone," he said. She caught the bar quickly, nodding fast. "I got separated from my family. We were traveling." Reed narrowed his eyes. He had walked these woods for years, and no family had ever traveled this route. Still, he didn't press her, not yet. "There's a path behind you. Follow it west. It leads to a safe zone." The girl stood slowly, bowing her head. "Thank you, kind sir," she said, then turned and ran, disappearing into the trees. Reed waited in silence, his instincts prickling. He didn't follow her, not yet. Instead, he backtracked quietly, looping around to the far side of the forest. And what he saw froze the blood in his veins. A group of mercenaries, 6 of them, huddled near an old transport ship hidden in the rocks. One of them was showing a screen with a blurry image of Tali. Reed ducked low behind a fallen tree, listening. "That human's protecting her," one of the mercs said, tapping the screen. "She's worth 5,000 credits alive, 2,000 dead." Another grunted. "I say we burn the bunker and collect the ashes." The young girl stepped forward from the shadows, tossing the protein bar to the ground. "He bought the story," she said, smirking. "He thinks I'm just a scared stray." Reed's jaw tightened. The girl had been bait, a decoy. They were coming for Tali and Niru. He slipped back into the forest, moving fast. Every step felt heavier as anger built in his chest. By the time he reached the bunker, his hands were shaking. not from fear, but from fury. Tali was standing near the door, holding Niru. Her eyes met Reed's and widened when she saw his face. "What happened?" she asked quickly. Reed closed the door behind him, locking the metal bar. "We've been betrayed," he said. "Mercs, 6 of them. They know where we are. They're coming tonight." Tali's arms tightened around her baby. "We have to run," she said, panic rising in her voice. Reed shook his head. "We won't make it far with a child. They'll track us." He began moving fast, pulling weapons from hidden compartments, setting traps around the room. "This place was built for war," he said. "Let's remind them what war looks like." Tali stood frozen for a moment. Then slowly, she placed Niru in a warm cradle beside the heater and walked to Reed. "What can I do?" she asked. Reed glanced at her. "You sure?" She nodded. "I'm not leaving without fighting." Together they worked fast, sealing doors, setting up alarms, loading weapons. Tali wasn't strong, but her hands were steady, and Reed realized she wasn't just a survivor, she was a fighter too. Night fell fast, the sky outside turning red as the ash continued to fall. Then the silence broke. A loud blast hit the outer fence, followed by shouting and footsteps. "Come out, human!" one of the mercs yelled. "Hand over the alien and we won't gut you." Reed picked up his rifle, standing beside the door. "That's a lie," he muttered. "You'll gut me either way." He looked at Tali one last time. "Stay near Niru. Don't open the door unless I say so." She nodded, eyes filled with worry but no fear. Reed opened the outer hatch and stepped into the ash-filled night. The mercs were already moving through the trees, weapons ready, but Reed was ready too. The first trap went off. An explosion of light and smoke. 2 mercs fell instantly, screaming. The others spread out, shouting orders, but they couldn't see clearly. Reed moved fast, striking from the shadows. One by one, they fell, surprised by a human who fought like a storm. He wasn't just strong. He was brutal, efficient, and unafraid. Back inside, Tali held Niru close, rocking him gently even as muffled blasts shook the walls. She whispered softly, "Please come back. Reed, please be okay." Outside, the final merc tried to run. Reed caught him, slammed him to the ground, and whispered, "You should have walked away." Then silence returned to the forest. Reed limped back into the bunker, blood on his arm, dirt on his face. Tali rushed to him, helping him sit, her hands trembling. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked. Reed gave a tired grin. "Nothing I can't walk off." Niru giggled from his cradle, and in that moment, between ash and fire, death and survival, something pure filled the room. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were something stronger. They were becoming a family. Smoke rose slowly from the trees outside the bunker. The ash in the sky glowed orange, lit by small fires burning where traps had exploded. Broken bodies of the mercs lay scattered in the distance, silent reminders of a mistake they never should have made. Inside the bunker, Tali gently cleaned the wound on Reed's arm. She moved carefully, her hands still shaking from fear, but her heart burned with something new. Fury and awe. "You fought them all," she whispered. Reed didn't answer, his eyes half closed. His muscles were tight, breathing shallow, but he nodded. "They came after you," he finally said, voice hoarse. "I wasn't going to let that happen." Tali finished wrapping the bandage and sat beside him. Her baby, Niru, slept peacefully in the warmth, unaware of the blood that had been spilled for his life. Reed stared at the bunker wall, eyes distant. I used to believe violence solved nothing, he said softly. But the universe doesn't always listen to kindness. Tali looked at him, confused but curious. You're not like the others, she said. Most humans I've seen, they don't care. Reed turned to her slowly. Most humans don't see what I've seen. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of pain and understanding, two souls broken by different worlds. Now sitting in the same place, breathing the same air. Suddenly, the bunker's alarm beeped again. Once, twice, sharp and fast. Reed jumped to his feet, wincing but alert. That's not another scout, he growled. That's something heavier. Tali grabbed Niru and backed away, heart racing. Reed pulled up the screen. A transport vehicle was heading toward them, armored, not stealth, not hiding, coming in loud. These weren't just mercenaries now. This was a full hunt. They're bringing more, Tali whispered. Reed nodded. They're angry now. I killed their team, and they want to send a message. He checked his rifle, nearly empty, grabbed a sidearm, only 2 power cells left. He had supplies, traps, and one final weapon hidden underground. But time was short. He looked at Tali. Take Niru and go to the escape tunnel now. Her eyes widened. No, what about you? I'll draw them away, buy you time. Tali shook her head, tears rising. You'll die. Reed stepped closer, placed a firm hand on her shoulder. If I do, it won't be for nothing. You and Niru have to live. They won't stop unless someone stops them. Tali didn't want to go, but Niru stirred in her arms. Sensing her fear, she kissed her baby's forehead, whispering soft promises. Then she turned back to Reed. If you die, I'll never forgive you. He gave a tired smirk. Then I guess I better survive. She vanished into the tunnel, metal door closing behind her. Reed stood alone in the bunker now, and for the first time since the war, he let go. He armed every trap, activated the final defense grid, took out the last weapon he had hidden deep in the ground. A pulse launcher, old but powerful. He didn't plan to win. He planned to remind them why humans were feared. The transport rolled in, headlights cutting through the dark. Doors opened. Soldiers in armor stepped out. One of them shouted, "Human, surrender and we'll be quick." Reed stood on the roof of the bunker, weapon in hand. You had your chance to be quick. The sky lit up with fire. He launched the first pulse, knocking 2 soldiers into the trees. Gunfire erupted, beams slicing the air. Reed moved through smoke and shadows, like a ghost made of rage. One by one, they fell, confused, panicked, not expecting a wounded man to fight like 10. Not understanding they weren't fighting for money now. They were facing a man with nothing left to lose. Inside the tunnel, Tali ran through the darkness, carrying Niru close. She cried not from fear, but from knowing what Reed was doing for them. He was buying their future with his blood. She reached the safe house at the tunnel's end. An old cabin hidden beneath the hills, collapsed on the floor, holding Niru, sobbing into the silence. Behind her, the night roared, flames rising from the forest, screams echoing into the sky, and above it all, the sound of one human refusing to break. By morning, the fire had faded. The soldiers were gone, the transport destroyed, and the bunker collapsed in smoke and ash. Tali waited near the tree line, her eyes searching, and then a figure appeared in the distance, limping, bloodied, armor cracked. Reed, alive, barely, but breathing. Tali ran to him, tears pouring. You idiot, she cried, hugging him hard. Told you I'd survive. He whispered, voice rough but smiling. And under that burned sky, beside broken trees and a future born in fire, a human and an alien stood together, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as something more. The trees whispered quietly in the wind. Smoke still hung in the air, but the fires had died. Bird-like creatures returned to the skies, chirping as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Tali sat by a small stream outside the hidden safe house, washing Niru's blanket gently. Her hands moved slowly, but her heart beat strong. Her child had survived, and so had Reed. That was enough to make her believe, just a little, that the worst was over. Reed lay on a bed inside the cabin, bandaged from head to foot. His ribs were bruised, his shoulder cut, his legs sore from running. But he was alive, the human who had fought through fire, who had protected them again and again, was now resting like a fallen warrior, breathing slow and deep. When he finally opened his eyes, it was night. He blinked at the wooden ceiling, confused for a moment. Then he heard soft humming, and the smell of warm broth reached his nose. Tali turned from the small stove when she saw him move. "You're awake," she whispered, walking over with a bowl in her hands. Reed tried to sit up, but she gently pushed him back down. "Don't be stupid, you nearly died." He chuckled weakly. "Again." She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Stop doing this, Reed. Stop throwing yourself into fire for us." He took the bowl and sipped slowly. "I don't know how to live any other way," he said. Then he looked at her, his voice softer. "But maybe I can learn." Days passed slowly but peacefully. The safe house was small, but surrounded by trees and wildflowers. Tali hung Niru's blanket outside each morning. Reed sat in the sunlight when he could, healing quietly. Niru laughed more now, his tiny hands grabbing Reed's fingers. The boys' laughter filled the cabin like music. Each sound broke something hard inside Reed, something he hadn't known still existed. One evening, as stars filled the sky above them, Tali sat beside Reed near the fire. She looked up and asked, "Did you ever have a family?" Reed nodded slowly. "I had a daughter. She was Niru's age when I left for the war." Tali's eyes softened. "What happened to her?" Reed looked into the fire. "She died in a shuttle crash, just before I returned home." His voice didn't shake, but the silence that followed was heavy. Tali reached over and took his hand. "I'm sorry." Reed didn't pull away. He held her hand gently. "Saving you and Niru. Maybe it doesn't fix what I lost," he said, "but it gives me something to believe in again." Tali looked at him for a long time. "You saved us, Reed, not once, but every time." She touched her chest softly. "You didn't just give us food or shelter, you gave us the right to live, to feel human." He smiled at that. "You're more human than most humans I've met." They sat like that for hours, not needing to speak. The fire crackled gently. Niru slept nearby, and above them, the stars burned silently, watching this fragile peace grow stronger. The next morning, Reed stood on the porch using a crutch for support. Tali joined him, carrying a small bundle of tools. "What's the plan now?" she asked. Reed looked over the trees, eyes sharp again. "We rebuild." They found old farming supplies hidden in the cabin's back room. Together, they cleared the ground, planted seeds, and fixed the roof. Every action was slow, but filled with purpose. It was no longer about surviving. It was about building something that could last. Tali taught Reed how her people grew certain herbs that healed faster than any human medicine. Reed taught her how to set up solar panels and water filters. They shared meals, shared laughs, and slowly shared their pain. One night, Tali stood at the doorway watching Reed rock Niru to sleep. The sight made her heart ache in a way she hadn't felt in years. She stepped inside and whispered, "He sees you as his father." Reed paused, then looked up. "And what about you? What do you see me as?" Tali didn't answer right away. She walked over, took Niru gently from his arms, and kissed her child's forehead. Then she looked at Reed and said, "I see you as the reason I still believe in kindness." Reed lowered his head, emotions running too deep to speak, and in that quiet moment, something changed between them. Soft, unseen, but real. A promise was rekindled, not one spoken, but felt. The promise that they would never face this cruel universe alone again. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were builders, protectors, family. The morning sun broke through the clouds like gold pouring over the trees. The old safe house, once hidden and broken, now stood stronger than before. The garden outside was full of green sprouts, small but growing. Life had returned to the land, just like it had returned to them. Tali walked barefoot through the grass, Niru on her hip. She pointed to the flowers, whispering their names. The baby reached out, giggling, trying to grab the colors. Reed stood nearby, fixing the solar panel with quiet focus. His body still carried scars from the battle, but his heart no longer felt as heavy. He looked up when Tali laughed. It was a sound that healed something inside him every time. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. In the weeks that followed the attack, they had built more than shelter. They had built something rare, trust, peace, and a new kind of family. But news traveled across planets. Whispers of a human protecting a cast-out alien mother had spread. Some called it foolish, others called it betrayal. But a few, a rare few, called it hope. One day, a shuttle landed near their forest. Tali grabbed Niru quickly, heart racing. Reed stepped in front of them, rifle in hand, eyes sharp again. But the shuttle door opened slowly, and a familiar face stepped out. It was an old war medic, human like Reed, but older, his eyes kind. He raised both hands, showing he came in peace. "I heard what you did," he said softly. "And I'm not the only one." Behind him stepped others. 3 alien families, tired and hungry. One mother held twin babies. Another led a blind elder by the hand. They had heard the story, followed it like a thread through darkness, and now they stood there, hoping for shelter, for safety. Tali looked at Reed, unsure. Reed glanced at the families, then nodded slowly. "Let them in." That day, the safe house became more than a hiding place. It became a sanctuary. They shared food, built new beds, planted more seeds. Reed taught the older children how to fix things. Tali taught the mothers how to grow healing herbs. And together they created something no war had ever built. Community, but not everyone was happy about it. The bounty hunters returned, this time not with guns, but with threats. They sent messages through drones. "Turn over the aliens or we burn it all down." Reed watched the message, then smiled. "Let them come," he said calmly. But they didn't come, because now Reed wasn't alone. Now there were 30 of them, and every single one would fight to protect each other. More people came, drawn by the story. Some humans, some aliens, some who had lost homes, some who had lost hope. They found it here, among trees and ashes and courage. The old safe house became a village. No name at first, just a feeling. But the children called it Ashlight, because it was born from fire and filled with light. One evening, as the sky turned purple and the stars blinked awake, Tali stood beside Reed, Niru asleep in her arms. "You gave us this," she said softly. "No," Reed replied. looking at the stars. We gave it to each other. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You think people will ever stop hating those who are different? Reed took a deep breath. Maybe not all people, he said. But if enough of us stand up, one person, one act of kindness at a time, maybe that's how change begins. Tali smiled. Then maybe this place is the first spark. Behind them, laughter echoed from the fire pit where the children played. Niru was dreaming. His tiny hands curled into fists. He would grow up not in fear, but in family. And every time someone asked how the village began, Tali would say, I was starving, holding my child near death, when a human heard me whisper, just the scraps for my baby. And instead, he gave me everything. And Reed would shake his head and say, I didn't save them, they saved me. And somewhere in that balance, between loss and love, pain and protection, a new meaning of humanity had been written, not by weapons, not by orders, but by one man who refused to walk away. And that, in the end, was the story, not of war, not of death, but of what made humans powerful, not their strength, but their choice to care when no one else would.